I'm here with Sam Gringlas, the former managing news editor at the Michigan Daily and now a contributing reporter. And he was in Iowa just about 10 days ago, and he's here to talk about the presidential primary. So welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
So tell us a little bit about your trip, how it came to be, and just what you did.
So every presidential election cycle, the Daily likes to send a group of reporters to Iowa to kind of cover the early stages of the presidential contest. And so this time was no different. We headed out on a Friday afternoon. It was me, a columnist, and a photographer, and we kind of based out of the Davenport area, which is on the very eastern border of Iowa, just across the Mississippi River, and we spent the weekend there going to town halls and rallies and trying to understand what is this caucus phenomenon that's used to start the process of electing our next president.
Yeah, absolutely, because Iowa's the first in the nation. Who did you get to see while you were out there?
So the first day we spent with the Dems in a town called Clinton. We saw former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and then from there we scooted on over to a rally with Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
That's so funny that it was happening in Clinton, Iowa. I wonder if she gets any edge from the
Well,
town
you know,
name.
in the very beginning she made a joke that you didn't have to name the whole town after me. I still would have come here anyways. But it was neat to see them in the same place because you kind of got to see them very close together, trying to differentiate themselves as candidates.
Right. And then did you see any Republicans while you were out there too?
And then Sunday morning we had a chance to go to a Donald Trump rally, which was, as you can guess, a pretty unique and interesting experience.
Yeah, he's an interesting candidate, to say the least. Could you maybe explain for our viewers what a caucus is and how, because it's the first in the nation, and some people do know what a primary election is and some people don't. So what makes a caucus a caucus?
Sure, so a caucus is all part of the same nominating process as primaries are, but they do it in a different way. So with a caucus, people actually show up to a location and not just to cast their vote and get in and out, but they actually have to stay there for the entirety of the process. And that works differently between Democrats and Republicans. So Republicans is a bit more straightforward. You show up, people representing different candidates make speeches to try and convince other voters to go that way when they cast their vote. And then they'll write down their vote on a piece of paper, and people will literally count this piece of paper to get the vote tallies that then determine the delegates that
like a
are
secret
allotted.
ballot.
Yes, on secret ballot. Democrats is a bit more complicated, and it's going to take a bit longer. So Democrats, you show up, and everyone stands in a corner of the room based on who they're supporting. So if I was supporting Bernie Sanders, I might go in one corner. If I was supporting Hillary Clinton, I would go in another. And after everyone's kind of sorted into their initial corners, all the different representatives or supporters of each candidate get to give a speech and try and convince people to come over to their side. And so then there's some moving around, and it's kind of this town hall-like forum where then people are actually counted from each category. The one catch, though, is that you have to have a 15% threshold to get delegates.
That's what I had heard.
So Martin O'Malley, for example, is not making it past that threshold in a lot of precincts. And so then once you're under that threshold, all the Sanders and Clinton supporters are trying to get those O'Malley folks to come over to their side.
Right, and I actually read that Martin O'Malley dropped out of the race after Iowa. That's so interesting.
Yeah, he did not pick up delegates in too many precincts at all, and so he made the decision to step out of the race.
Yeah, now he's done. So it was a historically close race between Hillary and Bernie. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that came to be? I mean, throughout the Democratic caucus, but just what it means.
Yeah, and so moving up into the caucus, polls were showing that, some were showing that Clinton was in the lead, a couple were showing that Sanders was actually edging her out. And so people knew it was going to be close, but I think it was a lot closer than people even expected. For most of the night I was watching at home, the delegate counts were flipping back and forth by up 4, up 3, and so it was very close throughout the same night.
Yeah, they didn't even call it until the following afternoon, and I believe she ended with 49.9% of the vote, and Bernie had 49.6. That's margins don't get.
And so in terms of delegate count, it'll make a little bit of a difference, but I think either way, that night, Hillary Clinton wasn't able to give a complete victory speech, and Bernie Sanders did not have to give a concession speech. So I think Bernie Sanders is going into New Hampshire with almost as much momentum as he would have had with a win, and Clinton is definitely very happy that she didn't have to concede to Senator Sanders, because I think that would have been a big blow for her campaign, especially since she lost in Iowa in 2008 to Senator
Yeah, absolutely.
Obama.
It's so interesting to have the first primary end in a tie, essentially. What about the Republican side? What happened there?
So Republicans, a lot of polls were showing that Trump was going to pull it out in Iowa, but we ended up seeing Ted Cruz pull it in. And both of those two were kind of pulling for a lot of the evangelical vote out in Iowa, which is traditionally a more conservative Republican base than in some other states. But I think the real story of the night there was not even necessarily Trump pulling into second, but Marco Rubio picking up such a significant amount of delegates and moving into a pretty steady place in third. And so now he's kind of that more establishment representative moving in that lane that's trying to vie for the voters who are thinking of Jeb Bush or John Kasich or folks like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just still so many candidates on the Republican side. I know a few dropped out after Iowa, but I don't know, that still leaves us with half a dozen. So what does this mean going into New Hampshire?
I think the establishment folks are going to be really trying to fight for that lane. People like Jeb Bush, John Kasich, Chris Christie are really going to have to show that they're exceeding expectations in New Hampshire, and they've put a lot of resources there. Some of them, did not devote much attention in Iowa, and I think they're really going to have to show they can do better than people think they are if they're going to stay in the race any longer.
Well, great. Well, we'll have to watch the New Hampshire primary next Tuesday and see if your predictions come to fruition. Thanks so much for being here with us, Sam, and back to you.